grew up in a small valley in the mountains. No matter where you looked, you would be encased in mountains. Although not in the middle of nowhere. The nearest town was about a 30-minute drive or a 50-minute bus journey. The closest city being a 2-hour journey, excluding the wait for transport. The valley had its fair share of children my age too. About 30 children in my class growing up. Despite the amount of children my age, I never got along with any of them. I never really had access to much technology either. I'm part of that one generation where we grew up both playing outside and on technology. I never got access to the internet until I was 12, excluding using family computers. I was lucky enough to have the forest to explore. So, when I was old enough, I would be allowed to take my dog to the forest to explore at my own will. Since I had gone there so much as a child and was usually responsible, I was allowed to explore alone when I was 8. The forest was close to my home, and if I wasn't back by dark, family members knew the forest as best as I did and would know where to look. Since then, I've always been fond of the forest. I graduated primary school and went to a comprehensive school about 20 minutes away. Then, I made a few friends, but they all lived too far away to hang out regularly. I'd rather play video games or explore the forest alone. By the time I was 15, I had been to every part of the forest and knew it by heart. I knew the terrain of each part too, and had different landmarks. Though, through all these years spending hours a day in the forest, I never saw anything I could call weird or out of place. Okay, so I found a few animal carcasses, and that was a little disturbing the first time I came across one, but foxes lived in the forest. As much as I wanted to take a few bones as a trinket for my disturbing find, I knew to leave it be. I didn't want a disease, even if it let me skip school. When I was 16, people began to cut down the forest. I'm not sure why, but since I was the only one enraged by this, I assumed it was bound to happen. The forest lost its beauty aside from a few chunks of forestry still standing, so I'd still spend time in those, but it was nowhere near as fun. I knew there was bound to be less wildlife, but the forest felt a lot more dead than expected. I remember hearing that the company cutting down the trees quit for no reason. They refused to specify why they quit, but I'm grateful they stopped, as my favorite tree remained standing. It would have been cut if they hadn't stopped. Now, I've caught you up with everything important to this story, so here's the whole reason I'm telling this to you. I still kept doing my regular walks through the forest, but this time I would always be followed by a sense of dread. One specific day, during late August, I had an argument with my family. This was a regular thing, so I went off to the mountain to just walk and calm down. Since my parents go to sleep relatively early, 9 p.m., and it would remain light until 10 p.m. during summer, I decided I'd stay until about 9 p.m. and get home by 9:30. It was about 8:45 when I sat down by my favorite tree for a cigarette. Yes, I know smoking is bad for you, especially starting at such a young age, but at the time I couldn't have cared less. I lit my cigarette and put the lighter down next to my feet. The sense of dread came, but by this point, I knew how to ignore it or just drown it out with music. I sat there and puffed for a little bit, just enjoying the scenery I've seen hundreds of times. It was getting dark, but only a little. I looked down to part of the forest where a small stream ran through, and sheep usually roamed. If you go a bit onwards from there, you can find this awesome rock. It's huge. As I stared and contemplated going to the rock after my break, I saw something move. It was tall. I could tell that as it moved through the trees, but I couldn't make out what it was. Before I could realize that whatever I was witnessing was probably supposed to scare me, it was gone. Odd, but I ignored it. About 10 minutes later, I decided to head to the rock. It would be an easier journey home if I did, and I got to see the cool rock, so what's the harm? Well, a lot of harm. I cut through some trees and down a slope. Then I followed the stream down. I passed where I saw the shadow move, and the sense of dread became overbearing. My mind ran back to the shadow I saw wandering, and I tried to shake it off, not being a believer in the paranormal. I thought, even if the paranormal were real, if they roamed this forest, I certainly would have noticed sooner. I spent my whole childhood up here. I came towards the rock and climbed on top of it like usual. There's a stunning view of the mountains if you know what trees to look through, and the added height from the rock helps so much. Though, what I least expected to see was the shadow. It moved quite slowly, as if being careful. Now, I had a good sense of its size due to it being a lot closer than before. It was tall, deer-like, but stood on its back legs and had human hands. A pair of antlers, long and winding, stood on top of its head. Once it noticed me, it stood still and stared. Standing on the rock usually made me feel tall, but I've never felt smaller than during that moment. We stood there, both still, for a moment. The creature began to move towards me, faster than when it had been exploring. I stumbled off the rock and landed awkwardly on my ankle. I groaned in pain, knowing it was sprained at the very least. I'd sprained my ankle before and recognized the pain. The creature didn't pity my state. It kept moving towards me. We were now face to face. Somehow, despite how it was still supposed to be somewhat light for a couple more hours, the forest became dark. I stared the creature in the face. Oh, how I wish I hadn't. If I hadn't looked at his face, I wouldn't have seen those small red eyes or that mouth. The mouth was the worst. It was large and wide with many sharp pointy teeth all out of place. They were stained yellow and had traces of blood on the canines. This creature was not friendly. I scrambled to my feet, and as I did, it swung its arm for me, barely missing. I turned my phone torch on and sprinted away, not even daring to look back. I never wanted to see whatever the hell that was again. I got to an opening, and it was light again. I was confused and turned back, the creature backing away into its dark patch of forest. I don't hesitate to run home and go straight to my room. My ankle was still in a lot of pain, so I just stayed in bed whilst rummaging my bag for the painkillers I always carried around. When night came, I was too disturbed to sleep. I heard a scraping noise outside my window, and my mind ran to all of the worst possible ideas. Even so, I looked out, and there it was. Those horrible teeth and everything. I quickly turned on my bedroom light, limping to my light switch, of course, and it ran away. I've learned something important. It hates light. Since then, it has followed me to dark places. I have to keep a flashlight on me, and I keep a small lamp on by my window to scare it away. But I know that one day it will get me, and I am terrified of it. So, learn from me. If you are exploring out in nature and you feel a sense of dread, leave. You don't know what you may find. This was in 9th grade. There was this huge state park right outside of the town that I lived in. My friend and I would go down the trails every now and then. We had been walking for maybe 10 minutes when we realized there was this older woman not far behind us. I only really noticed because of how out of place she looked. Like she came straight out of an old folks' home and was just dropped in the woods. We were joking around about how creepy she was and sped up to put some distance between us. But every time we did, we'd look back and still be able to spot her. We did that probably 3 times. We still thought it was funny though. So we ended up running down the trail until we got to a small bridge. We hopped off the bridge into a creek and then went around a bend. We could still see the bridge from where we were. We were cracking up about the whole thing when we saw the old lady again. We ran for a good couple of minutes, like she shouldn't have caught up that fast. And it was like she knew we got off the trail because she was just standing on the bridge looking around. I think that's when we stopped thinking it was funny. As soon as she left, we took off running the other way. That was it though. Nothing happened. I just always thought the whole thing was creepy. Now, I know that story wasn't like a really long one or didn't go into a lot of detail, but almost just in the fact that it didn't have much detail, kind of boosts the creepy factor, because I'm picturing like this elderly lady like with a walker or like a hospital gown type of thing, just like appearing out of nowhere. Like it's giving me like I Am Legend vibes about the old lady in the diner. So I had to share it with you guys. All right, on to the next story. So I'm new here and was wondering if anyone could tell me what this might have been. I'm honestly terrified and might never go back outside at night again. I was walking my dog, a black and white pitty retriever mix, outside before putting him to bed around 11 p.m. It is very dark as there is a lot of wooded areas around my apartment complex. I usually walk him about half a mile or so from the complex to a stop sign and light post at the end of the street, which borders the woods. Usually, there's nothing out of the ordinary, just woods and the normal animals like squirrels and the occasional deer. Sometimes there's that weird heavy feeling like somebody's watching you intently, but I mostly ignore it and we cut our walk short and head home since a brief scan of the area shows nothing is there. Tonight, there was that heavy watched feeling again, but when I scanned the woods, there was something there. A dog with glowing yellow eyes that looked exactly like my dog, down to the heart-shaped white spot on its chest, standing just past the tree line, staring directly at us. It looked like it could be his twin, but there was just something off about it that invoked that feeling of run. My dog definitely saw it too and was whining and staring at it hard. Usually, my dog is reactive to other large dogs, but he seemed more scared than anything else and wanted to get away, which is very abnormal behavior for him. After seeing it, I felt that run feeling and walked quickly but casually back into the gated area and home without looking back, but listening very hard for anything coming behind or to the sides of us. Instinctively, it felt like the safe thing to do. I don't know why. It seemed like it didn't follow, but who knows. I do know that I will be skipping nighttime walks for a while, that's for sure. Any ideas on what this might have been? Google was not much help. I live in northern Georgia at the base of the Appalachians, but I didn't grow up here, so I'm not sure of the local folklore for the most part. So this is a true story. About 2 years ago, my boyfriend at the time and I decided to go on a hike right before the sunset. Which, yes, sounds dumb, but it's something we had done multiple times before with no issues. There was something about the eeriness of the woods at night that I liked. Not so much, my boyfriend thought. To start our hike, we had to go through really tall plants and bushes. We were practically in the middle of nowhere. About a mile into the hike, we came across some abandoned structures and sat down to take a breather. I'm not sure exactly what my boyfriend said to make me do this, but as a joke, I whistled and said, "See, nothing whistled back. We're alone." Not even 20 seconds after saying that, we heard a whistle. It was a bit a ways from us, but still too close for our liking. We immediately started booking it in the opposite direction of the whistle and didn't look back. after running for as long as we could, we realized we were lost. We wandered around for about 10 minutes before we stumbled across some train tracks that led back into town about a mile or two down the way. It's important to note that these tracks had thick woods lining both sides. The right side is where we came from. At this point, we were walking as we ran out of energy and felt safe. We were wrong to assume that we were safe. We got to the point where we could see the lights from town, maybe a quarter to half a mile away. Down the tracks a little bit, we could very faintly see the outline of what looked to be a deer coming out of the right side of the woods. It stopped in the middle of the tracks and just stood there. I attempted to shine my flashlight. Note, this flashlight was pretty dim. It was a random one I found in the back of the junk drawer. So, I attempted to shine my flashlight on it, but as soon as I lifted my light up, it fled. Now, I say fled because ran would not be an accurate way to describe the way it moved. The best way I can describe is that it looked like it had 4 broken legs, and its body was very low to the ground, yet it had unbelievable speed. It almost looked like a bent and twisted monster out of a horror movie. I shined my light into the woods to the left of us, as that's where it had ran, and when I did, I saw 2 glowing eyes that looked to be at least 10 feet in the air. My boyfriend said, "What is that?" in a very concerned tone. I told him, I don't know. Don't look at it, just run." We ran and ran until eventually we reached town and walked back home. This happened about 2 years ago, and I've tried to come up with logical explanation after explanation of what I saw that night, and still to this day I can never find a solid, logical answer other than it being something paranormal. I refused to believe what I had seen for a long time, but I know what I saw, and I know I'm not crazy, as there was another person that witnessed the same thing as me. My boyfriend never spoke of it again and refused to speak about it when I would talk about it. I never went hiking at night after that day. Well, I hope you all enjoy these true encounters of disturbing sightings in the woods. I want to give a special thanks to all the Reddit users that allow me to narrate their story on my channel. I will leave timestamps and links to their original posts down in the description box below. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing, as there will be more content to come. I've kind of set a goal for every Thursday, each Thursday, to upload the new video for the week, so just look for that. I have a lot of new ideas for my channel, so thank you so much for listening. Anyway, see you next time.